Bob Huttinga. I am a physician assistant, and my wife and I, Barb, operate the Healing Center. We're at Lakeview, Michigan. And it's always fun to come up here and share some of this information with you folks. We've been coming to the Senior Enrichment Day for a number of years now. So today we're going to talk about holistic health. And some of you may be familiar with this, but we're going to kind of give you an overview. I always like to start my talks with a little story. About 10 years ago, I was working at urgent care in Alma, and a gentleman came to the clinic there. He was 103 years old, and he drove himself. He cut his finger working in his workshop. He wasn't on any medicines, very healthy. So I'm sewing up his finger, and I asked him, well, what's your secret? And he said, I stayed away from you dang doctors. Now, I tried to tell him that I was a physician assistant, but he didn't care. He just wanted his finger sewn. Many people have that feeling. They like to do things for themselves, and our motto is put your health in your own hands. So this talk is going to be about things that you can do for yourself to improve your health. A little overview. We talk about traditional medicine, naturopathic medicine, homeopathic medicine, and some body, mind, and spirit concepts. And if you have questions, please ask them as we're going through the presentation. If it's something very personal, I can talk to you afterwards about it. I'm going to send out a little sign-up sheet. We do a little email newsletter. If you don't have email, then you're out of luck, I guess. All right. So what is health? Anybody have an answer to that?
It's expensive.
Well, the typical answer is the absence of disease. But the reality is that it's having enough energy to do the things you want to do every day without any limitations. And unfortunately, the traditional medical community's focuses on more of the problems. So you start with what we call a constitutional health. That's what you're born with, and the effects of your mother's pregnancy. So your genetics and those effects. And then things happen to you as you go through your life. There are emotional shocks, physical shocks, and most of the time we recover, and our level of health after one of those events is the same as it was before one of those events. But sometimes it's a little bit less. And so a lot of times we get into our 50s, 60s, 70s, and our level of health is a lot lower than it was when we started. And then there are things that influence our ability to recover. The immune system, our vital energy, obstacles to recovery. And those obstacles are deficiencies and excesses. And finally, there's pathology. This is the destruction of tissue, things that actually break down. So to review that, you have your level of health that you start with, things that happen to you, things that influence your ability to recover, and then actual damage. Unfortunately, in traditional medicine, this has been the focus, the damage. What we try to do in natural health is focus on things before there's actual damage and physical change. Traditional medicine is disease-oriented, problem-oriented, and they have to have a diagnosis based on evidence, tests, and damaged tissue. Therapeutics have to do with medicines and surgery. Now, in traditional or in natural medicine, it's health-oriented, and the focus is on symptoms, and they guide us. Deficiency symptoms, excess symptoms, and we want to make corrections before that damage occurs. And the therapeutic emphasis is on finding the root cause, and then building if there's a deficiency, or cleansing if there's an excess. Now, in health assessment, we do a variety of things. There's something called iridology. Iridology is a look at the iris. The iris in each eye has a little pattern, and it pattern represents different parts of your body, and we can tell by looking at that if something is going on that one of these organs. We look at tongues. This is a normal-looking tongue. If you got a long, pointy tongue with a red tip, it's often an indication that there's some heart issues. Now, if you have that, it doesn't mean you have heart problem, but it means there's an indication that maybe you're going that direction. And so you pay attention to that and you look at those issues. We look at fingernails. We look at feet. There's a whole concept called reflexology. Anybody ever had a reflexology treatment? This is like a massage on the bottom of your feet. Very, very beneficial. And the bottom of your feet is a mat. So if you have a heart issue and you massage this area, you actually can improve that area. My wife does something called toe reading. She can look at your toes and the structure of the toe, how far apart they are, direction they're pointing, can give you information about what's going on, mostly with your emotions. And then we do muscle response testing. So the therapeutic emphasis in natural medicine is nutrition, hygiene supplements, herbal medicine, and homeopathic medicine. So let's start with nutrition. Unfortunately, there's a lot of obesity today, and it has to do with what we eat, how much we eat. And much of our focus is attempting to get people to eat different and eat less, smaller portions. Now the thing today is that many people actually have too much body fat, but yet their cells are starving. And part of that is there's faulty digestion and absorption of material, and energy is often stored as fat instead of burned for energy. Now some of this is that people have what's called the leaky gut syndrome. Most of the time it's caused by yeast that are in the small intestine, and the lining of the bowel gets altered so that we absorb partially digested food. So if you eat, let's say you eat dairy products, and you don't break down the milk protein completely into the appropriate amino acids, and you absorb a partially digested molecule, when that gets into your blood, your immune system says, what is this? This looks foreign. And it begins to make an antibody against that. And this is how you develop food allergies, food sensitivities, and often the autoimmune inflammatory diseases are actually associated with this concept. So most foods that we eat today are actually dead. We really want to have foods that are fresh, either raw, steamed, organic is best. And part of the reason for that is the food that we eat has enzymes in it. Come on in.
Sorry, we're late. We were in the other hallway.
Come on in.
We got lost.
We lost.
You can sit right down there. The foods have enzymes in them that help us digest those foods. Now we make digestive enzymes with our pancreas and our stomach, but these foods actually contain some of the enzymes that are needed to digest the food. For example, fruit. We don't produce an enzyme called fructase, but the food has an enzyme in it called fructase, which breaks down fructose, which is the fruit sugar. Now, we use a couple of different systems. We like to eat right for your blood type. It's not 100%, but if you're an A blood type, for example, red meat will often cause inflammation in your system. I have a patient that has rheumatoid arthritis. For probably 25 years, her fingers are all gnarled up, very painful. But if she doesn't eat red meat, she has no pain. But half a hamburger will give her pain for 4 days. So sometimes this is a very nice system to help us select our food. We also do something called the apoe diet. That requires blood tests. Lots of people are lacking the normal bacteria that live in our gut. And part of the reason for that is chlorinated water, antibiotics, artificial sweeteners. Now, it's really important to stay away from chlorinated water. Chlorine blocks the iodine receptors in our thyroid. And so many people who drink chlorinated water have thyroid issues because of that. This is kind of complicated, so we're going to move to the next one. Foods to avoid. We want to avoid trans fats. Now, trans fats are fats that have been overheated and they change their shape and they become what's called trans fat. So, if possible, grill or boil your food instead of deep frying it. Avoid margarine, eat butter. For many years, we told people butter was not healthy, but actually it's much healthier than the margarines that are available today. Homogenized milk, the process of homogenizing milk releases an enzyme called xanthine oxidase. This is a very acidic compound, and it actually causes osteoporosis. So if any of you are dealing with osteoporosis, you might want to think about avoiding the traditional dairy products. You want to stay away from refined sugars, white flour. If you're going to eat grains, use whole grains. High fructose corn syrup, our bodies has a hard time digesting that. So if you're going to use something, use pure cane crystals, or there's some other products, stevia, xylitol, Splenda and NutraSweet are actually quite harmful to our systems. We want to avoid carbonated beverages, excess coffee, alcohol, tobacco. And a little crime we like is avoid white, eat bright. So the brighter your food, the more color in your food, the better it is for you. So hygiene has to do with exercise. We should exercise daily, strengthening exercises, stretching exercises, and some aerobic exercise. You can look up aerobic heart rate, and it gives you a little chart. It's in my book, but it's also on the internet, and it tells you how high you need to get your heart rate in order to have an exercise qualified as aerobic. Water, no chlorinated or fluoridated water. It's very important. And you should drink enough water each day so that your urine is either clear or slightly yellow. Some people say you should drink half of your body weight in ounces. I think that's probably a little too much. But if you just look at your urine, the morning urine is going to be a little dark. Daytime urine should be clear or just slightly yellow. Now, we all have 4 routes of elimination of wastes: our liver and our bowel, the kidneys, urine, the lungs, skin, oil, and sweat. And all of these need to be operational for us to stay healthy. So sometimes we see people that have really bad breath. Why is that? If your liver, bowel, urinary system are not eliminating waste properly, they'll come out through your lungs. Same with body odor. If that's not working right, it'll come out through your sweat or your skin oil. So when people have these issues, we have them do a colon cleanse. And that's an herb combination that you do for a couple of weeks, and it gets that bowel working correctly, and the bad breath and the body odor disappear. So, supplements, big deal. There's lots and lots of supplements on the market. Sometimes you get confused with what you should do. There's a few things that we like to see people do, but we don't push a lot of supplements. So you have vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, fatty acids. Those are your omega-3 oils, like fish oil, flaxseed oil. Fiber is good, especially if you have bowel issues. If you have digestion issues, heartburn, we encourage people, instead of taking that purple pill, to take a digestive enzyme. And that should include pepsin, cellulase, amylase, lipase, and protease. That helps you digest all of those foods. And remember, if you're overcooking your foods, then you're losing all the enzymes that are in the food. So steam or eat a lot of raw if you can. And then probiotics. One of the new probiotics that we use is called Megaspore. These are good, healthy organisms that you need for your bowel to function properly. But we also know now that many chemicals that our body needs are actually made by these organisms in our bowel. Half of the neurotransmitters that make your brain operate correctly are produced in your bowel. We used to think that all came out of the brain and the nervous system, but at least half of them are made by your gut. Herbs. Herbs have been around for a long time. They've been the mainstay of medicine for thousands and thousands of years. There are many examples in traditional medicine. Digitalis, which isn't used very much now, came from foxglove, and the original digitalis was actually an herbal compound. White willow is the source of aspirin. It's been used to deal with joint pain and inflammation for thousands of years. A couple of herbal combinations that we kind of promote. One is Echinacea golden seal. These are immune boosters. They're great to help you prevent colds and flus in the wintertime. So if you tend to have colds or viral infections in the winter, it's a good idea to take something like this. Hydrangea is an herb that will help dissolve calcium kidney stones, calcium gallstones, and even bone spurs. Like if you get these little spurs on your fingers, I'll talk later about how you can get rid of that. And an herb called graviola, very beneficial for prostate cancer. Sulfonamide, very good for prostate function. Now we use a lot of homeopathy. Homeopathy was created by a gentleman named Samuel Hahnemann. He was a physician in the late 1700s, 1800s. And one of his children died, and he was so frustrated with the medical system at that time that he quit practicing medicine. Because back then they were doing enemas and bloodletting and vomiting to try to get the evil spirits out of you. Well, he became a translator of medical journals. And so he gained a tremendous amount of information over about a 5-year period. And he began to understand that there are other ways that you could do things to help people get better. It was Hippocrates had written something called the Law of Similars. And what Hahnemann found was that when people had quinine toxicity, they were treated with malaria. When people had malaria, they were treated with quinine. And if people had quinine poisoning, they would actually have the same symptoms as malaria. So he began treating people that had malaria with a medicine that later became a homeopathic remedy, China, and he had really good success with that. But here's an example. Most of you are familiar with syrup of Ipecac, right? Well, in the old days, everybody had a bottle of syrup of Ipecac in their medicine cabinet. It made you vomit. So if there was poisoning, you took this Ipecac to get the poison out of your system. Well, nowadays, with homeopathic Ipecac, if you're nauseated or having vomiting, you take syrup of Ipecac, homeopathically prepared Ipecac, and it will relieve the vomiting and the nausea. So the whole idea with homeopathics is that if an herb or a compound can cause a symptom, if you prepare it homeopathically, it can reverse that symptom. Another example, people have seasonal allergies and their eyes run, and their nose runs, their eyes itch, burn. Well, we have a remedy made from onions. So what happens when you peel an onion? You get burning eyes, runny nose. So this remedy reverses those symptoms, and it works very well for seasonal allergies. Now, if you look at a bottle of homeopathic remedy, you're going to see a number on it, and either an X or a C, sometimes an M. And that has to do with how it's prepared. If it's an X, it means it's been diluted 1 to 10, and if it's a C, it's been diluted 1 to 100. And How many times it's been diluted is shown by the numbers. This one's 12, this one's 200, that's 30, this is 6 times. And that's how the potencies are created. Now, it doesn't make sense to us because the more diluted something is, the stronger it gets. And that's very counter to what we normally think of in terms of chemistry. But that is how they're prepared. I'm going to move on here a little bit. Basically, when the research was done on these, the remedy was given to patients with those complaints, and the natural healing mechanism in our body stimulates things to go back to normal. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. I worked with a woman who was a PA. She was about 50 years old. She had a vitreous separation, which means that the jelly part inside of the eye separated from the retina, and she had a big, huge black cobweb in her vision. Some of you have floaters probably, right? Now, this was like a gigantic floater. And the ophthalmologist said, well, it'll go away in 6 to 8 weeks. So we used the homeopathic remedy phosphorus, 1 pellet once a day, and in 1 week it was completely gone. This is a gentleman, 74-year-old. He had a big spur in his neck, in his butt. We used homeopathic calcart and herb hydrangea to deserve that bone spur. So it was so bad he could only move his neck about like this. And after about 3 months, he was able to move his neck completely. This is a woman, 38-year-old, who had a flu shot reaction. We used the homeopathic gelsemium, 200C. That means it was diluted 1 to 100, 200 times. So it was a very potent remedy. And in about 2 weeks after starting that, twice a day, she had, actually it's supposed to be 4 days, about 2 weeks after that reaction totally reversed. Here's a kid, 4-year-old, with chronic ear infections. We took him off of dairy, put him on homeopathic camellia, had excellent results, and by age 10 he had not had a single ear infection. And I'd seen him like every 2 months or 3 months for an ear infection before that. This is a kid with ADHD. I hated to see this kid come in my office. He was 12 years old. He looked in every drawer. He walked around, jumped on the tables, crawled under things. It was amazing. We used homeopathic coffee. You know how you drink too much coffee, you get really wired? Well, the homeopathic version of coffee reverses that. And we had really excellent results.
Now, is that something he had to stay on the rest of his life? Sort of like,
No.
Oh, okay.
It's
Just like
take it for a while, and then it reverses things internally.
okay, now he will never have to go back on it.
Well, sometimes we get to see relapses.
Okay.
You know, maybe 6 or 8 months down the road, we just do it again, or we pick a different remedy.
I see.
This was a 45-year-old woman that had a fracture in her lower leg, tibia and fibula had fractured. She had a non-union. She had a surgery. They put little electrical implants in there to try to stimulate the growth. This thing wouldn't heal. She had new bone in 3 weeks after using this remedy, Symphytum. So if you ever get a fracture of any kind, you want to pick up some homeopathic Symphytum. So to review this, you start with a certain level of health. You have these emotional and physical shocks, obstacles to the cure. These are things that get in the way of your body recovering. And we want to try to see this happen rather than this deterioration in one's health. Every time you have an incident, you need to make sure that you're totally recovered. I see people frequently who say that, oh, I haven't felt well since I had that pneumonia in 1965. And they actually don't feel well. So we can actually focus on that using some homeopathic remedies and kind of rewire their system and get them feeling better. Now, another part of this is what we call body, mind, and spirit. You need to be in balance. All of these things need to be in balance. If your wheel on your car gets out of balance, what happens? You get a lot of vibration and things don't go well. So our focus then with this concept is, first of all, mental house cleaning. What you say to yourself in your own mind, we call that self-talk. Our self-image, that's how we picture ourselves. And our self-worth or self-esteem, that's how we feel about ourselves. This one's actually the most important, but it's the most difficult to change. Now, many of us have had experiences in our lives that have been emotionally traumatic, and that kind of programs us or impacts us for our whole lives, because we may say negative things to ourselves, and we may see ourselves as a particular way when it's actually not true. We do a hypnosis class for weight loss, and I had a woman in the class that had a gastric sleeve, and she lost 100 pounds, but then she was starting to eat again and it gained 30 pounds back. And she called me, I've known her for a long time, she called me, she said, I need to fix my head. So she came through our hypnosis class, and we used some techniques there to reprogram the old past. Now the story was her father had called her a fat ass as she was growing up. He was kind of a crude character, but this is what he did. She was a chubby kid. And all her life, that's what she heard. So that's how she saw herself. And when she tried to force her body to become smaller, that self-image and self-talk kicked in there and started forcing her back to normal, what she had accepted as normal. There's a book called You Can Heal Your Life by a woman named Louise Hay. She shows in this book how physical symptoms can be associated with emotional thoughts and emotional events. Now, we encourage people to do meditation. Meditation is actually a very simple process. We enter that state every time we go to sleep. So if you're laying down to take a nap and you're right on the edge of sleep and you're kind of daydreaming, that's the same state that you're in when you meditate. And so with meditation, we try to get people to excuse me, focus on positive thoughts, positive thinking. And I put together some CDs a few years ago. One is for kids. It's called Pay Attention, Coaching for Perfect Health, and Fit, Clean, and Sober. This is one for people with addictions. The idea is to help people learn how to relax, put themselves into what we call a programming state, and then change their thinking. So these are those CDs, and we have a couple more. One for smoking, virtual gastric band, that's the hypnosis program for weight, pain control, and Sleep Easy for people that have insomnia. I also put together a book a couple of years ago called Put Your Health in Your Own Hands. And this is, I wrote a newspaper column, and then I put a bunch of those columns together in this book. And it's all about teaching people how to take care of themselves. Feel under your desk. There's a little, there's a piece of paper under everybody, or some people's desks. See if you have one under your desk. Julia, what did yours say?
Book.
Well, I'm going to give you a copy of my book.
Thank you.
There should be some more around.
I'm gonna go buy it.
Maybe you picked the wrong chair.
CD.
Okay. You want a relaxation one, or weight control, or one for a kid?
Relaxation.
No. Stick it back under there. Don't come back the next one and sit in the same seat.
Don't tell.
So on the mental side of things, I want to talk about intuition. Everybody has intuition. This is a kind of nonverbal communication that exists with feelings, words inside of our head, little mental movies. Women particularly have stronger intuition than most men. This is because when you were raising children, you had to know what the child needed before when they couldn't talk. And so you actually learn how to read their mind, read their feelings, read their body language. And this is how intuition gets developed. We also see people that are very intuitive, and some of those are people that had really traumatic childhoods. I had a patient a number of years ago that they called him radar when he was in the military because he could sense where the enemy was. But the story was he had a schizophrenic mother who would either beat the heck out of him or want to cuddle with him. And he had to know before she came in the room, otherwise, what she was going to be like. Because he would either run or hide or meet her at the door. And as a result of that, he developed this highly intuitive sense of being able to feel what her mood was before she came. And I bring that up because everybody has that, and it's usually part of our survival system. And we need to learn to listen to it. Now, everybody from time to time gets funny feelings. Like, you ever leave your house and you feel like you're leaving something, you're forgetting something? Anybody ever had that? Well, all you have to do is say to yourself, I want to see a picture of this feeling. And when you do that, a little picture will jump in your head, and that will be what it is that you've forgotten. Maybe you forgot your keys or your glasses or your wallet or whatever. But just pay attention to that and try that little trick. It works really well. Now, the spiritual part of us, most people think of us that as the religious part of us, but religion is actually a component of spirituality. And spirituality is just a connection with a higher power, and it's important that we have that, develop that. I encourage people to think about this. When you pray the solution, not the problem. Many times I hear people, saying, I want to be healed from this cancer or something like that. What that causes us to do is actually focus on the disease. So you want to pray for perfect health. You want to pray to live to be 100 years old and still driving your car. So that's the kind of focus you want to have in that situation. We are constantly evolving from animalistic behavior to humanistic to spiritual behavior. So learn to develop that spiritual part of you. In holistic health, we encourage people to use whatever is available to you. I know some docs who just think chiropractic is hocus pocus. Well, if you have a back problem, we suggest that you go see a chiropractor or a massage therapist. If you got an appendix that's hot and infected, you need to go to a surgeon. So you go to where the solution is, and don't be blinded by, some of the old thought patterns that we have. Got to be in balance. And develop that spiritual side. We encourage practicing meditation and prayer. Do mental house cleaning. Consider a natural health assessment, nutrition, supplements, homeopathic medicines, herbal medicines. Try to improve that level of health. Every time you have some kind of an illness, focus on getting well completely. And if you have some old thing that is still bugging you from 40 years ago, there are some things you can do to actually correct that. So use all your options. Remember, anything is possible. You just have to find the right solution. If you're living in a situation or you're doing something that is stressful, do something else. Stress is a huge cause of disease. All right, questions?